Hey friends, happy Sunday and welcome back to another week of What's for Dinner. If you're new here, hello and welcome. I'm Taylor. I'm a stay-at-home wife and mom, and I share these What's for Dinner videos every Sunday to hopefully give you some new meal ideas and to motivate you to cook more for your family. We tried a bunch of new stuff this week, which was really good. We also had some old favorites this week that I hadn't made in a really long time, so I brought those back, and I can't wait to share with you all of the recipes that I made this past week. As always, any links that I have for any of these recipes will be in the description box. Now let's go ahead and get into this week's What's for Dinner. Friday night was our crock pot meal of the week. We switched to doing karates on Friday, so we'll be doing crock pot meals on Fridays for the foreseeable future because it just makes it easier for us to not have to eat out. We can just come home to dinner being practically ready. So this night we had these crock pot Swedish meatballs. I had this recipe printed out. I cannot remember if I made it before or not. I think we did, but it's super simple. So in the crock pot, I add 1 can of cream of chicken soup because we don't like cream of mushroom. But if you like that, you can use that. And then I did about 14 ounces of beef broth. I did water and nor beef bouillon, or you could just use a 14-ounce can of beef broth. And then 1 packet of dry onion soup mix, 2 tablespoons of steak sauce, and then I have this like Campbell's Flavor Up stuff that I picked up at Dollar Tree, and it was like a mushroom flavor, so I added some of that in there because I don't mind the flavor of mushrooms, just cannot stand the texture of them, just can't do it. And then I added in 2 pounds of frozen meatballs. I prefer the ones from Sam's Club, so I got those in there, and then I cooked this on low for about like 6 hours, and then at the end I gave it a stir and stirred in about a cup of sour cream and then just served it over egg noodles. Super simple, and everybody loved it. Something about like the gravy and noodles my family just loves so much. Saturday night we had a Pot Bbq Chicken Pasta. This is a recipe I know I have made before, but it's been quite a while. So I'm starting off by cooking up half a pound of bacon. I like to cut it up with my kitchen shears because it just makes it super easy to cook it that way. And then once the bacon is nice and crispy, I'm just going to push it to the side and drain off most of that grease. I just used a paper towel to soak it up and left about a tablespoon of that grease in the pan. The recipe I'm going to link you to down below is going to then have you add in some raw chicken breasts and cook that up. But instead of doing that, what I like to use is a can of chicken that I just drained, and I just kind of heat it up with the bacon a little bit. And then I'm also using some frozen minced garlic. 2 of the little cubes equals about 2 cloves. So I add that in there, and I just kind of heated that up until, as I said, the chicken was warmed and that garlic had kind of like thawed out, defrosted. It was mashable by that time. It wasn't a frozen cube of garlic anymore. Using the canned chicken in this just makes it so that it's a really easy dinner to make. You don't have to take as long to cook the chicken and everything. So once that's all warmed up, then I added in 2 cups of water, or you could do chicken broth. I did water and nor chicken bouillon. Then I did a can of petite diced tomatoes, half a cup of milk, a little bit of crushed red pepper flakes, some onion powder, salt, pepper, and then 3 cups of pasta. Recipe calls for rotini pasta. I used this vegetable something from Trader Joe's. It's a fun shape. The kids absolutely love it. And so I used that in place of the rotini. And the bag was exactly 3 cups, so it worked out perfect. So I add that in and then bring it to a boil. And then once it comes to a boil, you can cover it and reduce the heat to a medium-low and simmer it until the pasta is cooked through. For me, this took about 15 minutes. Then once the pasta is done, you just want to make sure that it's actually done. You'll notice that the liquid is mostly absorbed, and then you can add in 1/4 cup of your choice of barbecue sauce and then a bunch of cheddar cheese. The recipe says like a cup of cheddar cheese, but I think I did more than that. We love cheese. We like it cheesy. As I said, I have made this before. My family loves it. It's definitely one of those meals that I've made again and again, and I would consider it a family favorite. Sunday night, I made something completely new and like out of my comfort zone. This is a thick and crispy focaccia pizza. I had to buy a kitchen scale to make this. I'd been wanting a kitchen scale for a while, but when I saw that this was in grams, I knew I had to finally bite the bullet and buy a kitchen scale. So I am going to be measuring out all of the ingredients for this focaccia dough. I'm starting off with 450 grams of all-purpose flour in my bowl, and then I'm going to measure out 11 grams of sugar, 8 grams of salt, 2 grams of instant yeast, and then 364 grams of warm water and 40 grams of extra virgin olive oil. I went ahead and got all the dry ingredients, measured out, and put in a bowl, and then I stirred that all together. And then I measured out my wet ingredients and added that to the dough as well. You just want to mix it together until you get like a messy, sticky dough, and then it'll like form a ball in the center of your bowl. This is time consuming. I did this at night, the night before we were making it for dinner, because I saw in the recipe that you could kind of like prep the dough the night before and then let it rise on the counter the next day, like taking it out in the morning. But once I had my dough ball together, then I covered it and rested it for 5 minutes. And then with damp hands, I went and grabbed like a corner of the dough, stretched it out, and folded it over to the center of itself, just repeating that all the way around the ball of dough. And then I covered it and rested again for another 5 minutes. And then I did that again with damp hands. I repeated the stretching and folding all the way around the bowl. And then I covered it and rested it again for a final 10 minutes. And then you do another set of folds, repeating the process. And then it said on the final fold to flip the dough over so that the seam side was facing down. I feel like that made it a mess, but it ended up all working out in the end. I was like, hopefully I don't ruin dinner, but it all worked out in the end. So then I took that ball of dough and I put it into an oiled baking pan. I oiled my 9x13-inch baking pan with some olive oil. And then I wrapped this in plastic wrap and stuck it in the fridge overnight. Then in the morning, I just took the pan out of the fridge and set it on the counter, because it says you want to let this dough rest for 7 to 10 hours at room temperature. The warmer your kitchen is, it says the less time it'll take. I have a pretty warm kitchen, so I let mine rest for 7 hours. And after the 7 hours, it like filled the entire pan. So it was perfect and ready to bake. When it came time to bake this, all I did was take some pizza sauce. The recipe has like a pizza sauce if you want to make your own. I'm just using some bottled stuff that I already had. So I spread some pizza sauce over the top of it lightly with a spoon. And then you're going to take your fingers and dip them into the dough like all over it, because you usually do that with like a focaccia bread. But we're doing it with the sauce on it to kind of get the sauce like down into the bread. And so I just made little dimples all over, all the way down to the bottom of the pan. Done with that, washed my hands, and then added on some mozzarella cheese and pepperoni. And then this is going to go in the oven on 450. And I did mine for like 24 minutes. It says 23 to 25. Mine was right at 24. At 24, the crust looked nice and crispy. The other thing that I did do is, while the oven was preheating, I did have another pan in the oven heating up, because it says you want to put it either on a pizza stone, the pan that the focaccia's in, either on a pizza stone or a baking steel, and I don't have those things. I'm not going to use my money and spend it on one of those, so I just had a metal pizza pan that this 9x13 would fit on. So I had that in the oven getting hot, so then my pan with the focaccia in it could go on top of that. And then once it came out of the oven, I let it rest for about 10 minutes on a cooling rack, and then it slid out of the pan so nicely. It didn't stick at all, and it came out perfect. Andy said it reminded him of like old school like pan pizza from Pizza Hut. It was delicious. It was definitely like bready versus pizza crusty, but we all loved it, and I definitely would take the time to make it again. Monday night, we just had nachos. Super easy, quick. Everybody loves it. Made some ground beef with some taco seasoning, heated up a can of refried beans. I pulled the nacho cheese out of the freezer. We like to use the Rico's one that comes in the giant can at Sam's Club, and then I freeze it in quart-sized bags. We had some pico, some lettuce, sour cream, regular salsa, and the kids got to pick and choose what they had on theirs. Tuesday night, we tried a new recipe for a crock pot garlic balsamic pork loin. If you saw the vlog earlier in the week, you have already seen this recipe. But I did not follow it exactly. I will have a link down below, but I did not do half the stuff they wanted you to do in the recipe. I started out by adding 1/3 cup of chicken broth to the bottom of my crock pot. I just used water and some Knorr chicken bouillon, and then I added in about a 3-pound boneless pork loin, and then I seasoned that up with salt and pepper, paprika, onion powder, Italian seasoning, and then I added on a bunch of cloves of minced garlic. I think I used about 7, and then I drizzled on 3 tablespoons of balsamic vinegar. And then I cooked this on low for 5 hours. After the 5 hours, I wanted to make sure that it wasn't overcooked. So I checked the internal temperature. It was like right at cooked. It was like right at 145. And then I decided I wanted to use my little meat injector. I have this for doing the turkey for Thanksgiving and Christmas. I just took some of that liquid from the bottom of the crock pot and like sucked it up into there and then injected that into the pork. And then I turned this down to warm for about another hour until we were ready to eat dinner. Injecting it helps give it a little bit more flavor on the inside and makes it more juicy. Then just before we were ready to eat, I took this out of the crock pot and set it on a cutting board for about 10 minutes before cutting, and then I just sliced it up. I had Lily in the kitchen with me this night. She wanted to help me make the roasted potatoes. So she actually cut up all of these baby potatoes by herself and then washed them. And then we put them on a sheet pan and we drizzled them with some olive oil, some paprika, some garlic powder, some onion salt, and some salt and pepper. Tossed those around with some olive oil and then put them in the oven on 425 for about 40 minutes till they got tender but also nice and crispy on the outside. And then to go with our pork and our potatoes, we also had a can of green beans. The pork was a touch dry, even with me injecting it. It just is what it is. It happens sometimes with pork, but I did take what was left after I sliced it and stuck it back down in the liquid, and that really helped. Andy said with his, when he had his later, because he was not home at the time that we ate, so he had some that sat in that liquid a little bit longer, and he said that really helped. But overall, we really liked it. I don't know if I would make it again. I would probably try to maybe cook it a little bit less next time. I'm not sure. Wednesday night, we had this super easy chicken parm bake. I've made this so many times. I used to make it all the time. It's definitely not the same as like real chicken parm, but it's pretty tasty. So I seasoned up my chicken with some salt and pepper, garlic powder, and onion salt on both sides. And then I'm adding on about a cup of marinara sauce, just enough to cover like each piece of chicken. And these chicken breasts were whole chicken breasts that I cut in half horizontally. So really it's just 2 breasts. And then I end up with 4 pieces. That way they cook a little bit faster and I feel like more evenly. And then I top the marinara sauce with some provolone cheese. The recipe says 4 slices. I did enough to cover my chicken completely. And then in a separate bowl, I am mixing together a 1/4 cup of Italian seasoned breadcrumbs with about 1/2 cup of grated Parmesan cheese. And then you just sprinkle that all over the top of that provolone cheese. And then this goes in the oven at 350 for about 35 minutes or until your chicken is cooked all the way through. I like to use my digital like thermometer to check the chicken and just make sure it's cooked through. And I serve this with the rest of the marinara that I heated up on the stove and over some spaghetti noodles. My family loves this. Lily wasn't actually here for dinner this night. She went to dinner with Grandpa and she was like, are there leftovers? I still want to eat that. And she actually had that for lunch today and she loved it. And finally, the last meal of the week is Magic Crispy Baked Tilapia. The recipe that I'm going to link down below is actually for shrimp, but you can do this just as easily with 4 pieces of tilapia, and my family loves it. I do the shrimp too. It's delicious. So I start off by adding half a cup of chicken broth to the bottom of a 9x13-inch pan, along with 2 tablespoons of butter, and I stick that in the oven while it's preheating to 425. If you want to, you can use wine, but just in case you didn't know, you can substitute the white wine for chicken broth in like any recipe. It changes the flavor slightly, but I don't usually have white wine on hand, so I just most of the time use chicken broth instead. And then I took another 2 tablespoons of butter and melted it in the microwave. And while that was doing its thing there, I minced up a bunch of garlic. I think the recipe calls for 3 cloves. I think I doubled that. I did a bunch of cloves of minced garlic. And then to that butter, I'm going to add the garlic and then the juice from 1 lemon and some salt and pepper. And just mix that together really well. That's what you're going to use to put on top of your tilapia. So then I just poured that all over the tilapia and let it sit until it was ready to go into the oven. And then in a separate bowl, I stirred together 3/4 of a cup of panko breadcrumbs, 1/4 a cup of freshly grated Parmesan cheese, a little bit of salt, and another 2 tablespoons of melted butter. Then when the baking dish came out of the oven, I put the tilapia in the butter and made sure to get all of that garlic and lemon juice mixture on top of the tilapia. And then we took the breadcrumb mixture and spread that out evenly over the top. Then this went in the oven on 425 for about 12 minutes. You just want to check and see if your tilapia is cooked all the way through. For me, it was perfect at 12 minutes. You can broil this for a couple minutes at the end. I usually do for just like 2 minutes just to get it nice and brown and crispy on top. And then you can top it with some parsley and serve. I like to usually serve this with some garlic Parmesan pasta. I've shared the recipe for that many times. This time, instead of making it with orzo or couscous, I actually made it with this Harvest Grains blend from Trader Joe's. And my family did not love it. It has like beans in it and they just were not a fan. So I will stick to making the garlic Parmesan pasta with just orzo or just couscous or some other kind of small pasta. The Harvest Grain blend from Trader Joe's was not a win for my family. And then we also had some fresh veggies on the side of this. I have made this magic crispy tilapia before. We love it. We love it as the shrimp. Highly recommend it if you like tilapia or shrimp. It is delicious and pretty easy to make. And that is going to be it for this week's What's for Dinner. I hope that y'all enjoyed it. I hope that you got some new meal ideas. Let me know in the comments down below if you plan on making any of these recipes. And make sure you leave me a smiley face emoji down there as well to let me know you made it here all the way to the end. I hope y'all have a great week and I will see y'all in the next one. Bye!